What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you all for joining me as always. And allow me to be your tour guide today for Camp Crystal Lake. Alright everybody, so I know I said in my original video that my plan was to rank all 12 of the Friday the 13th franchise films. I still do plan on uploading that video, but I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. Looking ahead on the calendar, I actually didn't realize that we have a Friday the 13th coming up next month in August. So, my new plan is to review 3 of these movies each week. So this week will obviously be parts 1 through 3. And by doing that, I can finish all of those videos by the second week in August. And my plan is that Friday, the 13th, to release my ranking video of all 12 of the entries. You know, I just figured why waste the opportunity if we have a Friday the 13th next month. With that being said, obviously in every series that you do of reviews, you have to start with the original. So, let's get into Friday the 13th. So, set in 1980, this movie takes place 22 years after a young boy is killed at Camp Crystal Lake by drowning. He obviously drowns because camp counselors weren't around when he fell into the lake. They were off, we'll say, doing other things. And following his death, a few of the counselors are seen on camera being killed. So the movie does actually start for a few minutes in 1958, and then we flash forward to 1980 when the camp's reopening and we're kind of getting introduced to these new counselor characters. Now, this movie, in a lot of ways, I'm conflicted about it. I will say when I was younger watching this franchise, this was maybe my least favorite of all of them. Now, before people get angry, I just want to say that this movie has definitely, out of all of them, this movie has grown on me the most as I've gotten older and rewatched the series. I consider this a pretty decent movie now. Is it at the top of my list? No. But it's definitely far from the bottom of my list. This movie does a lot of good things. For the time being, especially 1980. I love the tone of the movie. I love the atmosphere. You know, a camp out in the woods naturally just kind of gives off that creepy vibe. I love some of the cinematography. I'm definitely a big fan that they do of the point of view shots. Now they incorporate these some in the next few entries, but obviously the first movie is where it is best utilized, as this is the only movie out of the 12 that we don't know who the killer is. We don't know who done it. Whereas in the rest of the movies, we know who done it. Jason done it. Yeah, but it's really set up so brilliantly in this first movie, seeing a lot of it through the perspective of the killer. We get that first person point of view shot multiple times, and it's utilized really well, I think. Another good thing about this movie that goes along with the point of view shots and the atmosphere, I think they do really well building tension and suspense. They really, they don't get right into it a lot of the times. They really make you wait for it. Not as well as Halloween did it, but to be fair, comparing the original Friday the 13th to the original Halloween, it's not fair. So let's get into that. This movie did obviously come out 2 years after John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. And that, my friends, is no coincidence. I don't think many people would argue if you said that this movie is kind of a ripoff of Halloween, because really that's what it is. Where this movie differs is that Halloween was more focused, I think, on the stalking nature of the killer and the kind of subtle kills. Whereas this movie, with producer-director Sean S. Cunningham, they kind of they went all out, they wanted to focus on the brutality of the kills. And, in a lot of ways, I think that works to this film's advantage. especially when you have somebody like Tom Savini. Now, anybody that likes thrillers, likes horrors, they probably just got a smile to their face when I just said the name Tom Savini, because everybody in the genre knows the name. But if you don't, Tom Savini is basically a special effects makeup artist, and a lot of people would consider him the godfather of the horror genre when it comes to that. And I mean, it shows in this movie, in my opinion. Some of the deaths in here, for being 41 years old, some of these deaths hold up as some of the best in the franchise, and I'd even say some of the best in horror. Whether it's the axe to the head,
Must be my imagination.
of course, the arrow that comes up through Kevin Bacon's neck. Nice. And then at the end you have, spoiler alert, the decapitation of Pamela Voorhees, who's the killer. So, I mean, these kills are really good. You know, there's a few in this entry that I'm not going to include that are, you know, they're nothing special. They're kind of under the camera kills, whether it's like a knife to the stomach. All you kind of really see is the facial reaction of the person being stabbed. And obviously those are nothing special. But man, a few kills in this movie are... Yeah, so those are a few things I think it does really well. On top of that, now, you'll see when I start talking about bad things, characters definitely not a highlight of this movie. But there are two. There's obviously Pamela Voorhees. Betsy Palmer is terrifying when you get to see her. She's terrifying in this movie for the final 15 minutes. That final act, which is another one of my highlights, the final act of this movie. And a thing I think a lot of these movies get right is the final act, even through an otherwise bad movie. But yeah, when we get to the end of the film and it's the chase between Pam Voorhees and Alice, that's brilliant. She is terrifying, like when she's talking to herself from Jason's perspective.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
And then when you have a great scene when you have Alice hiding behind the wooden door, and you know Betsy Palmer's kind of peeking her eye in there like Jack from The Shining. Yeah, that's terrifying. So I think she does really well in her role. I think that final chase scene is done brilliantly. And of course, the other character I'm referring to is not Alice. It's not Kevin Bacon. That's right, it's Crazy Ralph.
You're going to Camp Blood, ain't you?
God damn it, Ralph, get out of here. Go on, get. Leave people alone.
You'll never come back again.
Oh, shut up, Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
I mean, come on, how can you not love this man? He's just trying to warn them. I'm sure a lot of people back when they saw this in theaters probably thought Crazy Ralph was the killer, and I think that would be justified. I mean, the dude's creepy. All right, now, I think I've said plenty of good things about this film, and these are a lot of the things that elevated this amongst some of the worst entries. This definitely climbed the ladder in my rankings. But, that being said, there are some things this movie does not do great. And I'll give it credit because the top two issues I have with this movie are gripes that I have with about 80% of the movies in this franchise. Number one, the characters. The characters in this movie suck. They're completely forgettable. I mean, you have a future star in Kevin Bacon, but, you know, in this movie he doesn't really do much for me. He's young, he's not what he would become later on in his career. As far as final girls go, Alice would be near the bottom of my list. I don't know how controversial that is amongst Friday fans, but Alice to me doesn't feel like a resilient, resourceful final girl. She feels like she just happened to be the last person alive at the camp. So yeah, not a fan of the characters, not a fan of the final girl. And then my other biggest issue with this movie, which I said happens to be the case for a lot of these films, is the pacing. We get long lulls and gaps in this movie where like nothing is happening. And for a movie that's built on, brutal kills, keeping us interested in that aspect, there are long times in this movie where really we don't get any of that. And in a movie with better acting to hold up the plot in the in-between scenes, that would be perfectly fine. But when you have mediocre acting as well as long gaps of kills, it kind of becomes a bore at points. And probably me at a younger age, that's probably what I was holding on to more than anything. Overall, I definitely like this movie more now than when I was younger watching it. It's definitely climbed up my rankings. I don't really know how I feel about giving things scores yet. This is my first video, obviously, so I'll kind of decide in the future if I actually want to give movies scores or like a letter grade, anything like that. For now, I'm not going to do that. But I will say this movie is definitely worth watching. And yeah, we'll see you guys for part 2.